All right, welcome to the Unfazed, Unedited podcast, where we provide commentary on complicated topics in an uncomplicated format. I'm Dr. Shauna Payne Gold, and I go by she, her, hers pronouns. And Dr. Lisa, here we are in yet again another life swap where I'm getting
Hmm.
snow, and I don't think you got any this time. So
Nope, nope, we didn't. And we're in
terrible.
March. We're in March here, and
Hmm.
that is supposed to be a pretty heavy snow month. But what was someone was just saying to me that I think New York City in that last snowstorm got more
Hmm.
snow in a day than Colorado has had in the entire season, or something like that.
Look, so all those times we talked about or mentioned Mamdani, we did not mention anything about snow removal in any of that stuff we talked about.
Right,
We were
right.
talking about big, bold stuff. We never talked about snow removal, but it's serious up there. It's serious. And you know what I think is interesting is in the past, they've borrowed equipment and so forth from Canada in order to, remove the snow. And I'm like, Canada might not like us too much right now
Right.
because, yeah, Team USA hockey is the real deal, okay? Women and men. But yeah, they don't like us right now. I'm pretty sure we're enemy number one for multiple reasons here.
Yeah, I
So,
would say it's not just hockey.
yeah, exactly. Multiple reasons. There you go. So, oh, well, speaking of that, since we're already talking about Canada, let's go into the word of the week.
Yes, that is actually a fantastic segue because Canada is known for this. The US less so, perhaps. So it's a new word called neighborism. And Adam Serwer, who's an Atlantic journalist, one of my faves, he recently coined the term. He wrote this piece for The Atlantic on January 26th. Well, at least it was published on January 26th. And he had spent some time in Minneapolis driving around with all of the activists and just, members of the community who probably would not call themselves activists, but felt compelled to step up and deliver dinners or help take kiddos to school and things like that. And so I'm going to quote you something here from his piece. He says, if the Minnesota resistance has an overarching ideology, you could call it neighborism, quote unquote, a commitment to protecting the people around you, no matter who they are or where they came from. And one of the points that he makes is that J.D. Vance, the vice president, has multiple times made several comments around it's not unusual or odd for Americans, parentheses red white people, to want to be in communities, living in communities with people who are like them. So Adam Serwer quotes a speech that Vance had in July where Vance said, if you stop importing millions of foreigners into the country, you allow social cohesion to form naturally. And what Serwer is arguing is that kind of sentiment, or those remarks specifically, are the antithesis to neighborism, and that the Twin Cities has basically defied that perspective by saying someone doesn't have to look like me for me to care about their health and well-being and safety. And I am in community with all these people from all these different parts of the world and histories and ethnicities and races and genders, and that's my community. So his piece is really good. I'll link it in the show notes. But neighborism, what do you think, Shauna?
Yeah, I really, really like this word. And part of it is because y'all can roll back, especially for those that are some of our dedicated listeners to this podcast. You know that I have been on the empathy train for a long time now when it comes to the lack of empathy I see in the world, the lack of empathy as a priority, even vilifying empathy in this country, in the United States. And so neighborism sounds like the response to that. It's that, wait a minute, we
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
commitment to the people that are around us. It should be baked into our responsibilities to care about the people that are around us, that are our neighbors. And not parse that out based on identity. And that's what I so appreciate. Unfortunately, we live in a country where if you see a certain person on the side of the road with their car broken down, depending on their race or their gender, you might slow down or you might speed up. That to me
Yeah. Yeah.
runs away from neighborism, runs away from
Yeah.
empathy. And I'm not narrowing this down to what a lot of Christian perspectives would say is the Good Samaritan. I'm not boiling it down to that. I'm saying more of a circumspect understanding that if we are in any proximity to one another, then I have a commitment to care about your well-being.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Period.
Right.
And so with that, I'm still on that empathy train. And, you know, when we bring up these words, Lisa, especially when we present them to our listeners, I'm always careful to consider whether there's nothing new under the sun, meaning, are we saying the same thing in different ways? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think neighborism is another way to say empathy. I think it's another way to say community. I think it's another way to say or refer to Dr. King's concept of, or his reiteration of, not his concept, his reiteration of the beloved community. I think we're saying something in a different way that hopefully rings true for people to think about. Why is it that you don't know your next door neighbor? Why is it that you don't know the person down the street? Why is it, and I'm guilty of this, I'm not criticizing others without thinking about myself as well, how I failed in this area too. What switch turned on and off to tell us that we shouldn't care about our neighbors? I think there's some things that have been baked in regard to unnecessary fear, unnecessary guards and walls. Yeah, I just feel like there's been this big system that has trained us not to be neighbors for whatever reason. And so,
Yeah.
Lisa, you remember before, it was another podcast, I can't remember the exact language, that someone said, I want to be part of a village, but I don't want to be a villager.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That's what this feels like. And so I just want to be cautious that, yes, we're giving you new language, especially given that it's coming from a new mind that's thinking through this. And at the same time, encouraging people to think about what's the fundamental value that you may have. It may be your faith or religion. It may be just a value set that you grew up with that you don't see anymore. There has to be something fundamental. I mean, anybody that went to preschool or any school for 5 minutes talked about their friend or their neighbor in the next desk over, the next seat over, and then somewhere
Mm-hmm.
we lost it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the kind of underlying concept or maybe underlying behavior isn't new per se. It's just a new way to frame it in the context of
Yes.
Minneapolis. And it's just particularly salient when you have leaders in this country who are saying social cohesion is disrupted when people are different. And that's just not what we're seeing in Minneapolis and other places, of course. So,
That's right.
yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's going to accidentally segue nicely into some other places here. So let's go into phase one. All right, Lisa, I'm about to stir up some shit. Here I go. I'm about to
Stir it, stir it,
I'm
stir
about
the
to
pot.
stir up some shit, okay? Lisa, I take great pride in being aware of oppression Olympics when I see them. All right. Who is more oppressed than someone else? Who is more privileged than the other? And at the same time, here I am in my brain with a great possibility that there is an instance that happened on Sunday that may fit very nicely into oppression Olympics mindset.
Okay. Okay.
So, look, I'm over here with your people, Lisa. I'm over here at BAFTA, okay?
I didn't even know that award ceremony was happening, so you're on it more than I am.
I didn't either until the you know what hit the fan here. But let me tell you what went down at BAFTA. So Sunday there was the BAFTA award ceremony, and Lisa, you listen and tell me what you may be more offended by in regards to how this was all handled. But the short version is John Davidson was a guest. He was there and he has Tourette's syndrome. And Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, who were on the cast of Sinners, the movie, were on the stage to make a presentation, an award presentation. And John Davidson, who has Tourette's, shouted the N word multiple times, audibly, while they were on stage. Okay. Now, here's where it gets interesting, Lisa. The shout was audible in the broadcast. And at the same time, Lisa, we know that let's not get into the behavior just yet. Let's not get into the behavior and the response just yet. Let's get into the broadcast. The broadcast was delayed, a 2-hour delay, which we know a delay helps with any editing, or even if something that should have been auditorily clear was not, they can correct that. So there's lots of great reasons to have the 2-hour delay. So how is it that you edited some stuff, but you didn't edit this, Lisa? And so it was on BBC's YouTube from Sunday evening all the way until Monday morning, edited, but not with this specific language edited out. Okay, interesting, right? So there were a number of apologies. John Davidson apologized. I'll get into that in just a minute. But BBC issued a statement apologizing, saying some viewers, this is what I don't like with this wishy-washy language, Lisa. Some viewers may have heard strong offensive language during the BAFTA Film Awards. This arose from involuntary verbal tics associated with Tourette's syndrome. And as explained during the ceremony, it was not intentional. And then later on, it goes on to say, if anyone was offended, y'all, if y'all are watching, I wish y'all were watching YouTube right now. If you were offended does not constitute a freaking apology, but okay, whatever. And so, Lisa, this has been really interesting to me because BBC did issue an apology. John Davidson himself issued an apology on Monday saying he was deeply mortified if anyone considers my involuntary tics to be intentional or to carry any meaning. I've spent my life trying to support and empower the Tourette's community and to teach empathy, kindness, and understanding from others, and I will continue to do so. I chose to leave the auditorium early in the ceremony as I was aware of the distress my tics were causing. All right. So, okay, I appreciate the multiple apologies. I appreciate the people that were condemning the lack of editing and so forth. But Lisa, come on. At another point in another acceptance speech, someone said free Palestine and they removed that. They edited that. Now, I'm not giving an opinion on free Palestine. I'm just simply saying they edited what they wanted to edit, Lisa.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we're left with oppression Olympics in a way that we need to hold some things that are truths here. And Lisa, the reason why I say we need to hold some things that are truths here is because before I had even heard about this story, I saw a friend of mine that posted kind of this ambiguous statement that said, unfortunately, Black people are required to extend much more grace than we should. And I didn't quite know why she said that. And then I found out about this story and went back to the post and I realized that post was about this story.
Okay.
And so it feels horrible on multiple levels, partially because, yes, I understand that this person has Tourette's syndrome, and there are things that are said as part of those tics. There's even language to describe this phenomenon that has been studied for years now. And also as a Black person, and as any person that's an ally of Black people, hearing that language, not knowing the language is connected to someone with Tourette's syndrome is still startling. And add on top of that, the mishandling of the editing for the broadcast itself, Lisa, we got a lot of stuff to hold and we can legitimately point lots of fingers at folks. So I'll stop there, Lisa, but I'm wondering how this lands on you, given that I realized that this is extremely sensitive, and a lot of people walked away from this situation hurt, angry, mad, frustrated, sad. And yet, this is a lived reality for both parties. It's a lived reality. I don't know. I don't know. I have no
Yeah.
answers.
No, it's really, really complex. So
Yes.
this particular version or type of Tourette's, the person only says offensive things.
They didn't say specifically if they only say offensive things. They never said that in the, what, 5 articles that I read.
Okay, so we don't know that. Okay, because so I'm
So
thinking,
we
well,
don't know that.
so for someone with Tourette's to know something is offensive, they have to live in a world where they're absorbing the language, right? Um, so,
I'm with you.
so I think, tracking back even from that point, he had to have some awareness that that wasn't a very hurtful, problematic, egregious thing to say to that it would because he didn't say teacup, right? So
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think, phew, how about Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo? Have they said anything?
They only said, well, Delroy Lindo mentioned that, hey, we were just on stage to do our job. We heard it, but we just wanted to do our job and move on, because they didn't want to take the attention away from the winner of the award that they were giving.
Right.
So they were trying to stay on task, but they didn't mention anything specifically in response to John's tick or comment or language.
Yeah. So BBC fucked up, obviously, by
There
not
you go.
editing that out.
Mm-hmm.
They are likely, well, they just had that whole big editing thing with Trump, right, where he's suing them for like $1 billion or something because they edited part of his speech that made it sound worse than it was.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't feel. So apparently they've got an editing problem. I guess they need to do some training with their editors. But to edit out Freeze Palestine and not that, I think there's your answer,
And that
right?
wasn't the only thing edited out. There were 4 or 5 different things that were edited out.
Okay. Okay.
This N word tick was the only one that wasn't edited out.
So white people are likely thinking it was just a mistake. They probably missed it and didn't hear it and didn't edit it, right? Like that's the kind of, what is that phrase? Plausible.
Deniability.
No, 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 no. Like the phrase around you're looking for the most obvious reason without saying the most obvious reason is racism. I can't
Mm-hmm.
remember the phrase,
Mm-hmm.
but like white people make excuses like that all the time, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know the identity of the person who missed the editing, chose not to edit.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
curious,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't. I mean, it's wrong, right? But the person who said it has a tick and has been managing it his whole life. Like I don't know how to resolve this. Like,
Yeah. No idea how to resolve it. And y'all, let me just preface this by saying I am not an expert in this area at all, but I did a bit of reading from the Tourette Association of America, with some of the research that they've done. And it is an actual medical term, y'all. And I know I'm going to stumble through it, but coprolalia is the medical term that is used to describe a very curious, socially stigmatizing symptom of Tourette's, when an individual involuntarily outbursts obscene words or socially inappropriate or derogatory remarks. And so, Lisa, to your point, it could have been a racial slur. There are other examples that include genitals, excrement, sexual acts. There's lots of different words
mm-hmm.
that fall under this umbrella. And so, to your point, I'm saying this with deep humility and I know misunderstanding, which is why I'm asking the question. If if I've never been exposed to the word, then how how can it even be internalized to then be used as a tic, right? Like that's, I'm not quite. So, for example, if the
Yes.
only food that I've ever heard was apple, and then my tic becomes apple, well, that's because I've heard it and I've internalized it. So,
Mm-hmm.
how is it internalized in such a way to be used?
Yeah,
Because I
100%.
understand, somebody could use the nervous tick penis, or there was a child that I saw in a waiting room once going into a hospital, and that child used the F bomb continuously over and over again. And I turned around because, first of all, I was looking to see if the child was with a parent or an adult responsible for them. And then I'm like, wait a minute, was this purposeful? Well, once I heard it repeated, I said, okay, I see what's going on here. And I went on about my business. But the point is, I would love to understand the brain science that allows us to take in certain words that are then only used for this purpose when you have Tourette's. I don't know. I don't know,
Oh,
Lisa.
yeah, like I think you're right. So it's out there in the world, and he has, however his brain is working, has
Yeah.
internalized that term as derogatory, negative, harmful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if he didn't think it was rude, right, to use a kind of way British people might refer to it, if you have that particular coprolalia, you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to say it if it's because that is very specific to you only say offensive things or sexualized things or like inappropriate things, right? That particular
Mm-hmm.
type. Yeah. So it's a larger cultural so it speaks to a larger cultural problem about the use of the word in everyday language to the point where he has heard it enough to internalize it as a slur and then it becomes part of the tic. So if it wasn't
Yeah.
ever used, he wouldn't ever have been exposed to it
Right.
and then it
Right.
wouldn't become part of the offensive tic, right? That's what you're
Right.
saying. Yeah.
That, yeah, that's what I don't understand. I don't.
Yeah.
And I'm oops, please, I hope someone who's listening to this can help to explain it to us from a brain science level. And that's what I don't get. And so when I read a bit more about the coping piece of things, again, the level of ability to cope is indeed also different as well. So if, or let's say the little kid that I saw in that hospital in that waiting room was constantly saying the F bomb, and then he grows up to be an adult that is coping and functioning with a coping strategy, you might hear that child, now adult, start with the F sound, controlling themselves so that they don't say the entirety of the word. Right. And so at some point there becomes a coping mechanism. I'm not quite sure if this gentleman has the coping mechanism or not, but this almost feels like, Lisa, another classic battle of impact versus intent as well, because
Yeah.
the intention from this gentleman's perspective, I know a lot of people are judging that, but let me start from a place of positive intent, of positive assumption here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say this is truly a tic, and the context this person grew up in and has grown up in, what have you, has input this into his brain science, which now is part of the tic. Let's just say that's the case. The intention may not be uh villainous in any way, shape, or fashion, but there still is an intent for all the people that heard it, especially Black folk.
Yeah.
So we still have the both and I certainly don't know how to resolve it, Lisa, but I will say, I'm always like begging for an action item from all of our phases. I do think one of the things I would love more people to do, even if you still are deeply offended, deeply hurt, deeply disagree with anything that we've said here, at least be aware so you identify the behavior when you observe it, right? So fortunately, I've been around enough kids in other places and spaces where I can pick up on a few things that indicate, okay, this probably is a person that is demonstrating Tourette's. And at the same time, I still would be deeply hurt had I heard this, especially in a public space and place, but at least having context for it rather than immediately going to the assumption of this person is racist, this person is all the is, this person is, eh, even if that were true, there's still a context here that we need to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so just, I think we have a lot of learning to do around all of this.
Yeah, I mean, he left the auditorium, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Oh, hold up. Say more about that though.
Well, did you read a quote from him, but it didn't. He didn't actually say "I'm sorry," right? Or is that just he said that somewhere else, or he didn't say it? He just said that was he
I
was deeply
I've not
mortified.
I've not read in my opinion, knowing how you and I define apologies, this would not meet that definition of an apology. It's I'm
Um,
mortified, an explanation. I did not hear, I'm sorry. None of that. I did not hear that.
yeah. So that
It's an explanation.
yeah, explain. So, I mean, maybe he did, and we just don't have that information. But I feel a
Mhm.
bit conflicted about him leaving because I think about, to your point around like oppression Olympics, like how many social gatherings have people with Tourette's had to leave because of other people's discomfort. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
oh God, this is really because I feel like it was the right thing to do, and it also I don't like that he had to leave again. Like you
Well,
know,
and Lisa, the way he left, which I don't know, may matter to you too, because if it's something where, not that both aren't problematic, but let's just say there's two ways to leave. He chose to remove himself, or someone asked him to leave. They both of them may be problematic to you.
yeah, I don't know. It's so yeah. I don't I don't have a good answer. Like I just it feels uncomfortable that he left, but it also feels right that he left given that. It doesn't feel
Mm-hmm.
right that we don't have any documentation that he actually said the words "I'm sorry." Even
Mm-hmm.
even as controversial as that might be, that someone who has a tic that can't control what they say shouldn't have to apologize for that, right? Like asking a person with a disability to apologize for it. But this just feels a bit different, and I don't have a good argument as to why it feels different. It just does.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, BAFTA apologized, like I mentioned before, but I still feel weird about their apology. In fact, I will drop the link to the official apology. Um, and they do say we take full responsibility for putting our guests in a very difficult situation, and we apologize to all. We will learn from this and keep inclusion at the core of all we do, maintaining our belief in film and storytelling as a critical conduit for passion and empathy, ironically, empathy. And so, with that, I'm still like, again, this feels all lives mattery too, even with that. Like we apologize to all. That's like a blanket statement that's not, ugh, I don't like it. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't
Like,
like it.
I mean, I hope it was offensive to white people too, but the apology really should be directed at the people of color, particularly the Black Americans, right? For
Mhm.
whom that word in particular has a long historical tale of violence. So,
And Lisa, what I also thought about too, and you may have language for this that I don't have right now, but it kind of reminded me of when we were talking about the editing piece, like, who
mm,
just skipped over this editing piece. You remember we've told this story before in the podcast, but if you're new to this, let's tell you real quick. I remember when Lisa and I were both looking at the cartoons of our photo for the logo for this podcast.
mm-hmm.
And you and I both said that my skin was darker than what it really is in the cartoon and it needs to be lightened up. And we had it lightened up a couple times by whoever was doing the art for that, right? I realize that it's almost inescapable for you not to have some white gaze, Lisa, but you've done enough work to know or at least self reflect on if and when you have white gaze. Well, there's a lot of people that have not done the work that you've done to be self reflective, Lisa. And so, with that, I'm wondering, even as I think about the editing, I don't, it's a different word than white gaze. It's got to be something else where did you really just hear the N word by anybody and it did not pierce
Didn't
your
register.
eardrum to
Yeah.
hear it? Like it did
Yeah.
not register in your brain?
That's what I'm
And
wondering.
And so we know it's true, Lisa. It people around it to me, there's got to be something to it around, are the folks editing and listening, did it not pierce them in the same ways that it might have pierced you as a white person hearing it? Now, of course, black people, yeah, we're going to be affected a certain way, but I'm setting that aside for a moment. If the person was white that was editing, did it not register because they have been socially conditioned not to register that word?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think either possibility is good, right? They either just
Mm-hmm.
didn't hear it because they aren't conditioned to your point, or they heard it and thought it was fine. Like, so I
Mm-hmm.
don't, or maybe the editor flagged it and said, "Hey," and someone above that person was like, "No, keep it in," or yeah. I mean, we don't know, right? But there's not a good response. Like any of the
Right.
possibilities at the BBC are all
Mm-hmm.
bad. They're just like degrees of bad, right? Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's degrees of bad. And so, yeah, uh, what I think this boils down to white listening. Like
Yeah.
I just Googled real quick to see if there was some white listening parallel to the white gaze, where it's a white centered way of understanding the world that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
register things that people of color or self reflective
That makes
allies will
sense.
register.
Yeah.
Now that makes sense. I knew somebody had figured out a word for it, but yeah, white listening, like they're not hearing it. They're not hearing it and may
Yeah.
not want to hear it and have spent
Yeah.
their whole lives not needing to have to hear it.
It's not a word. The funny thing is, it's not a word that's used at the same frequency in the United Kingdom, and it doesn't have the
Uh,
same historical
gotcha.
background.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that so but that almost makes it worse because it's not a word you hear all the time. It should
Mm-hmm.
have been like, what? Right? Because it's not something that you're used to hearing. So I don't know
Mm-hmm.
that that makes it better.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So with that, we'll drop a bunch of links so that you all can see what occurred. If anything has developed between the time we found out about this and the time this particular episode airs, my hope is more and more and more apologies and, in fact, updated protocols on how they're going to edit
Yeah.
things moving
Yeah.
forward.
Agreed.
But pay attention to what's going on in the world, because, again, we have to be aware of how folks see others. Like, this feeds right back into that whole, in my opinion, the neighborism piece of things. How
Yeah.
is my neighbor affected by hearing or experiencing something?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So yeah, BAFTA, you done messed up. You messed up. You messed up. So, all right, Dr. Lisa, take us into phase two.
Okay. So, we've got a couple of heavy phases. So this morning, one of the journalists that I follow who I like very much, his name is Peter Beinart, and he is an author for Jewish Currents and also does a Substack called the Beinart Notebook, and he publishes in a variety of high quality publications. I find him to have a particularly strong moral clarity, shall we say, when it comes to both what's happening in the United States but also international conflicts. Like, I feel like his North Star really is justice in and thinking about all the ways that isn't happening, right? And so I listened to this little 7-minute video this morning, and it was in relation to Iran. And he said, it was titled something like, "What if other countries claimed the right to bomb the USA?" And his whole point was that what gives the United States the right to bomb Iran? So he basically says that all of the kind of, well, Iran is an oppressive regime, they're perhaps a threat to their neighbors, they're proliferating their nuclear arsenal, they're dangerous. like, and how people are kind of, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, kind of being not responding in a way that is perhaps appropriate, making all these excuses as to why attacking Iran would be a good idea. And he's like, well, they're all asking the wrong question. The question is, why does the United States think it has the right to attack a country that poses no threat to them, right? Like, it's not in response to an attack. It's not self-defense. It's just like Russia, right, going into Ukraine. Granted, Ukraine is not the same state as Iran, and I'm certainly not suggesting that Iran is a safe and democratic country. It isn't. And we obviously know recently with all of the protests, something like 16,000 people were killed. But I thought it was just interesting, Shauna, because I haven't actually heard anyone make this comment, this idea that because of US exceptionalism, the US thinks the rules don't apply to them, right? So if you argue that Iran is not abiding by kind of international treaties around nuclear proliferation, well, there was something in place that President Obama, the JCPOA, at the end of his term, that would have actually expired in 2025, but President Trump in his first term took us out of that, and Iran was actually abiding by that agreement because it meant sanctions were lifted. And so Beinart's view is like, well, if we're talking about countries not abiding by kind of the letter of the treaty, then the US is violating that too, right? And then the ways in which we think about human rights internationally, and the US says these human rights abuses in China and in the Congo and in Sudan and other places and such, right? They're atrocious, which they are, right? But then is unable, because of its kind of self-understanding as being this exceptional place, to turn the mirror on itself and be like, well, shoot, we have a ton of human rights violations going on here too, right? So what does that mean when we get on the world stage and critique other countries? So I just thought it was really interesting, his position on it, that we have no right to do this. And it's not even about whether Congress should approve it. Congress shouldn't approve it because we have no right to go into Iran and strike them. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what you're thinking here in terms of this double standard and this kind of the way that exceptionalism lets the US off the hook all the time.
All the time, all the time, all the time. Well, and I think too, I'll go back and then I'll go forward. Okay.
Okay.
I think I don't even think, I know that US exceptionalism obviously was here before 45, 47,
yep,
in milder ways. And now we're in a situation where we are in a presidential administration that not only pushes the boundaries of that US exceptionalism, it obliterates those boundaries.
Right.
And we got a bunch of people in power that allow him to do so.
Right.
So when you have a sitting president that says, this is separate but still related, a sitting president that says, I don't care what SCOTUS said about what I can do and not do, I'm going to do it anyway, then who's then to blame? He has already said and demonstrated that he is highly dangerous, and we still have a balance of power that is entirely imbalanced because there is no courage around holding him accountable.
Yeah.
And I am no, I am no political science major at all. I'm just simply saying anyone else in the United States that did not do what SCOTUS required of them, where would they be, Lisa?
Yeah. I mean, any other president or public official or indeed citizen, resident of the United States. Yeah.
And so I've blown past it's multi-layered because it's no longer just US exceptionalism. It's whoism now. It's his specific exceptionalism in every single system that allows it. We've talked about accountability ad nauseum on this podcast. And so to me, it's I think the frustration now has become, um, he's literally and figuratively using bombs and cannons, and we're using a fly swatter on him. Like, oh, let's just swat his hand and move on. No. I have yet to see strong accountability for him at all. And so when it comes to this, I'm like, okay, now we're at authoritarianism, we're at fascism, we are at those places where exceptionalism has now become personified, and the systems that were created for this not to happen are crumbling like what's his name, Thanos snap. When
Oh yeah,
everything
yeah, yeah.
disintegrates, that's what it feels like. So all those
Mm.
systems, like this fool snaps and all those systems disintegrate, like they weren't built for the very purposes of not having people like him in charge. So yeah,
Mm.
I appreciate where Peter is coming from with this, because it would not be acceptable for any other country. I would imagine, wouldn't it at least be a freaking war crime? I mean,
Yeah, there. I mean, there are international laws around. You can't just
yes,
attack another country. So this is what Russia. I mean, we know that Putin is a war criminal, right? But
there you
has
go.
evaded arrest thus far. But it's the same thing. I
It's the
don't
same
know
thing. Yeah,
why you can't just bomb a country because they're not doing what you want. Like if they're not a threat to us. I mean, I am. I mean, it's the same with Venezuela, right? You just roll in there and you basically
there you
kidnap
go.
the leader who is a piece of shit, right? But you
Mm-hmm.
don't like. Why does the U.S. think that it can just do this stuff? And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
can you imagine? Can you imagine if Russia or Iran or Denmark or some other country was like, we're gonna put ships around the edge of the United States on both the Pacific and the
Mm-hmm.
Atlantic coast. We're gonna put bombers, huge
Mm-hmm.
aircraft carriers, submarine nuclear subs are gonna get
Mm-hmm.
sent over there. I mean, it's just unheard of, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the US
Mm-hmm.
gets to do that with another country?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the, what Peter mentions as, the imperialism of it,
Yeah.
it's that to me, I'm like, no, we don't have a right to do any of this stuff. And furthermore, when you have people here, United States citizens that disagree, people in power who disagree, but again, a bully is a bully is a bully. This is bully behavior. I'm going to unprovoked impose my will against someone or some other country. Like, who does that? It truly is a power flex that is extremely dangerous. And again, where I think this goes, this has been I won't even say it's a slippery slope. It's been like Mount Everest. I mean, it's ridiculous. And how do you contract back from that, considering how much he's pushed and pushed and pushed? Like, how do you contract back from that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I
Global
mean,
diplomacy is shot to hell because of this man.
yeah. I mean, the US has a long history of interfering in other countries'
Absolutely.
governments. I mean, often covertly, right? Particularly in Latin America. So it's not new, I suppose, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just so brazen. I mean, it's been less. They haven't, necessarily just like bombed other countries. I mean, they have, but often there's been a declaration of war, there's been some congressional approval, but there's not any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I just really like that he's saying that's not the question that we need to answer. We need to answer, why does the US think it has the right? And this is why other countries dislike the United States.
Oh, for sure.
Even before
Absolutely.
the current administration, right? It
Absolutely.
throws its weight around. It thinks that it's better. I mean, Mark Carney talked about this in his World Economic Forum speech that you and I talked about on the podcast,
That's
right?
right.
That
That's right.
we have these rules, but they only apply to some, and the US is
Mm-hmm.
not one of the entities for which the rules apply, right? Internationally.
And it's almost like a daggone overcorrection, Lisa. Like it's an over, to me, it always feels like US exceptionalism always feels like this overcorrection from what we experienced at the founding of this country. Like they did it to us. And so now we're going to say it's wrong to do it to us, but we're going to do it to everybody else. It's
Right.
like, it's, what is it? It's almost like global hazing. Like we went through this, so now here's our retaliation. We're going to retaliate against the world for what we went through in order to even create this country. No, I have no clue where it comes from, but it feels like this overcorrection and the amount of hypocrisy that's embedded in it, as if we haven't seen this play out before.
Yeah.
That to me, that's always what gets me
Yeah.
about all of it. The
It's
amount of hypocrisy. You can see
do
it
as
in
I
others, but you
say.
can't see it in yourself.
Yeah, it's exactly, well, I mean, I don't know, probably some people can, but just don't do anything about it, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
anyway, I just thought it was a really good little piece. He's a great writer and thinker, and it was only a 7-minute video. So I would encourage our listeners to take a look when we post it in the show notes, and kind of just raises some bigger questions. Even if you think Iran is an oppressive, highly
Mm-hmm.
dangerous and problematic country, you can still think that, but that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
just bestow upon the United States this like universal right to go bomb the place, you know?
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Oh, yeah. I have to say, Lisa, I know we're far beyond. We just talked about oppression Olympics a little bit in the
Mm-hmm.
previous phase, but we did actually just finish wrapping up the Winter Olympics and then parlay into the Winter Paralympics. And
Mm-hmm.
I, every time I've heard the national anthem, I have felt disdain. Like my poker face
Mm.
sucks. Even when I hear it on TV, I'm like, yeah, these are extremely proud moments that I have for those athletes, but for this country is a different matter. And I wonder if others feel the same, especially when they see blatant
Yeah.
exceptionalism all around us all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, look, the to do after that particular phase, do what I just did. I just ran over and subscribed to Peter's Substack. So I get all his alerts of what's going on. That's where I get most of my reading material nowadays. So, but that's a wrap on this week's episode, y'all. You can certainly reach us on all of your social media and podcast apps at Unfazed Unedited with brackets around the first un. Email us at info@unfazedpodcast.com or just visit our website for all things unfazedpodcast.com. So if you liked this week's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share with your friends or coworkers or other folks in this phase of your life. So Lisa, until next week.
All right. See you next week.
All right. Welcome to the Unfazed Unedited podcast, where we provide commentary on complicated topics in an uncomplicated format. I'm Dr. Shauna Payne Gold, and I go by she, her, hers pronouns. And Dr. Lisa, look, we got a lot to talk about. We had a lot to talk about last week, but
We sure did.
we're gonna have a little bit of a, how can I say, even more of a current event that we probably should talk about, but got a little bit of nostalgia in it. So so how are you doing? And any snow yet? I mean, please take
Still
some of
no
ours.
snow. Still no snow. So, which
What's tourism like? I mean, really, what is tourism like?
I can't, I mean, I haven't looked closely, but I can't imagine the ski resorts are doing very well. I mean, a couple of them have gotten big dumps of snow here and there, but
Okay.
they're way, way down. So, I see pictures from like the Utah ski resorts and the Colorado ski resorts, and there's still, there's like parts of the mountain that
Mm-hmm.
are brown, green, dry, right? They don't have snow on
Mm-hmm.
them. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh, well, you can take some of ours. I mean, just stop. As soon as we melted ours down, we got some more. And
Yeah.
anyway,
Send it over here.
please take it. I beg of thee. Please take it. All right. So let's get into our word of the week. So, our word of the week is an interesting one because we have talked about grief a little bit in regards to a individual that shall not be named here on this podcast, but his wife's grief after very heinous taking of his life. We talked about grief in that way, but this is a little bit different. This word is ambiguous grief. Ambiguous grief. And this one, Lisa, was interesting to me as I read about it on Instagram because they described it as the kind of grief with no funeral, no closure, no casserole at the doorstep, just the quiet, suffocating weight of missing someone who's still breathing, still texting, still sitting across from you at Thanksgiving, like a stranger wearing a familiar face. It becomes a political divide when we are able to look at suffering like this type of grief, but are divided on how or if to name it at all. And I thought this was interesting because when it comes to ambiguous grief, I get that. I mean, I can talk about it from a number of personal levels where it's this ambiguous grief. Like the person isn't, has not passed away. However, you don't have what you used to have with that person in relationship to them, whether it's a friend, a loved one, whatever. But I feel like there are some of us, and as soon as I read this description of ambiguous grief, I actually thought about you and I in regard to our relationship with this country, in that
Ooh, interesting.
we're not separate from it because obviously we're still here. We have to interact with it all the time, but it is not what we think it can be. And I would even suggest for those folks that we are diametrically opposed to, that have continued to say that, going back to, the Reagan phrase of let's make America great again, that was, co-opted and changed and rearranged into red hats. I think it's two, or at least two different griefs going on. There's a group of people that want things the way it used to be, so they think. And so they're grieving past, and we're grieving possibility, but we're all grieving.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so with that, I always harken back to my second year in seminary. We had to learn all the different ceremonies and things like that. And of course, one of those types of ceremonies are funerals, and so we have to learn, those different phases of grief and so forth. And I'm like, oh, we might be in all of them. Like, I don't know where we are in the stages of grief, but I do feel like there's some ambiguous grief across the American people for divergent reasons, but still grief nonetheless.
And it's with grief around what the US is or is not is going to be is different based on your identity too, right? Like
That's exactly
if
right.
I've always believed that the US is the land of the free and opportunity and anyone can make it in the USA, right? Then I might be grieving the loss of that as I come kind of like slam face to face or head first into the reality that it isn't that, but that reality has been known by other people for a very long time. And so then it's a different type of grief, right?
Absolutely.
Does this
Absolutely.
does this also apply to like family members who you can no longer engage with because they're so like
Exactly.
out there in their politics and so then
Exactly.
okay.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. When they start talking about, holidays and family members that you can't engage with, I'm imagining, since you already talked about identity, this cycles back into our roots, Lisa, with when we were in higher ed spaces, understanding our students' development and particular
Mm,
identities that feel that grief every holiday cycle
yeah.
because they
Yeah.
can't go home or they can't be with their family of origin or whatever reasons. They're still alive. They're still, they still have a home as far as a house to go to, but at the same time, the relationship is not the same,
Mhm.
or the relationship is not what it could be, right?
Mhm.
And so absolutely, absolutely. And so, I think this is some language to describe what a lot of people have been feeling. I'm interested to hear or at least read more about the percentage of folks who are now estranged from family as it relates specifically to political stances and harm
Yeah.
around those areas. I
Yeah.
know that there's lots of other reasons, and Lisa, we've talked about that before around,
Mhm.
separating
Mhm.
oneself as an adult child and all these other relationships, but this feels a little different, especially
Mhm.
directly related to our political context right now.
Yeah. Okay, I love it. Ambiguous grief. I like being able to name things. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, let me take you into phase one. All right, Lisa. So last month, my birthday fell on President's Day, which was a Monday. And it was this very weird day where it's like, oh, I've got the boys, so we can certainly have cupcakes, but I'm not doing
mm-hmm,
anything super fun. I'm just going to hang out and chill with my guys until I go out with some friends later. Okay, cool.
mm-hmm.
And so while I was at home, I said, well, the least I can do is not do work. Hello, self preservation,
Yep.
and watch something
Uh-huh.
interesting that I've been wanting to watch because it had just dropped on Netflix. Y'all,
Hmm.
if you were ever a fan of America's Next Top Model, I implore you to run. Okay, run, run and watch Netflix reality check of America's Next Top Model. There's 3 episodes to it in this little small series. And Lisa, my word. It's okay. Let me tell you what I pulled from these
Okay.
3 episodes, right? Well, the first thing that I thought about, Lisa, was a little bit of revisionist history because
All
I know
right.
you and I have talked about this before, where TCM Reframed has this wonderful way of taking movies that at the time were socially acceptable, but now are
Yep.
completely inappropriate. And instead
Yep.
of just throwing them out and not showing them anymore, showing them with a updated lens to help us to critique and to
Mm-hmm.
learn why this
Mm-hmm.
is socially inappropriate, right? And I felt like I was going through that with America's Next Top Model, right? And how many of the challenges that, oh, this is interesting, or this is cutting edge. No, I don't even think it was appropriate when it aired for many of them. But that revisionist history of looking at a show through a different lens was so fascinating to me because I was sitting there again. Yes, I could be judgmental of a lot of folks, but let me start with me first. I'm looking at some of these episodes like, oh my God, did I really think this was entertainment? Because this
Oh
is
my.
not entertainment,
Right. Right.
right? Um, so that to me was so interesting to even look at my change of heart development, brain development over time of, oh no, this should have never been appropriate. Like the fact that we could depict violence against women and try
Mm-hmm.
to wrap it in this shroud of beauty in some way. Like that's the most
Yeah.
contorted bullshit I've ever seen, but yet I did not see it that way then. I just thought it was
Mm.
gross. I just thought it was
Yeah.
gross. This feels like a horror film. Well, some people have lived that horror film. So that revisionist lens was really interesting to me. Um, I think it was easy to try to make Tyra Banks out as the villain in
Mm-hmm.
this, when in fact, I think the entire modeling industry is the villain, and
Yeah.
she seems to be, uh, you know, one of the exceptions that became successful, even with struggle, became as successful as she could as a Black woman with a curvy figure, with an industry challenging identities, plural. And yet at the same time, at what point do we stop saying, oh, well, she could only teach what she knew? It's like, but you knew that some of these
Mm.
industry practices weren't acceptable and you just simply replayed them,
Yeah.
rather than obliterating them. So I thought that was interesting too. So that kind of reminded me of, Lisa, Dr. King's quote where he says, I'm afraid I've integrated my people into a burning building. It's
Yes.
like, look, Tyra just
Yeah.
held the hot door open and just escorted
Mm.
them into that burning building. So I thought that was interesting. And straight up, Lisa, I said it from beginning to end through all 3 episodes. What I struggled to articulate, but I finally figured it out, was that we're in a world now that's becoming more trauma informed. I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
we're perfect by any stretch, but we're
Right.
more trauma informed than when this aired. And so we shouldn't really expect a trauma illiterate show to be kind to women in a trauma illiterate industry.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we're trying to hold the show to a standard that it just doesn't, it didn't exist then, and it's, I don't know if it can ever exist, but to me it's more of a relic now, to be honest with you. And now as we know better, we do better, obviously, for those of us that look back in hindsight, but still I'm like, no. I went into it thinking, oh, Tyra's going to announce a reboot or something. I'm thinking to myself, after this, bury it. Don't bring nothing else back up. Don't try to reboot nothing. Just let it
Yeah.
go, because I'm sure people walked away with a relatively bitter and sour taste in their mouth from reflecting back on it, Lisa. But even if you haven't seen this recap, I'm sure that some of us have gone back where we thought something was the best thing ever previously, and then you go back and you see it in a different lens, and you're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
why was this such a big deal? Why did I like this so much? Or why was this even relevant to my world then? It's, you just see things so differently
Yeah. I
with,
mean, it's
your own development. It's
yeah, exactly. It's a
fascinating.
sign of growth, right? If you were to watch America's Next Top Model now and be like, "Oh, this is great," that would
Mm-hmm.
indicate, right, that you haven't moved very far.
Mm-hmm.
The Tyra Banks thing is interesting because I'm still reading this book. One day, everyone will always have been against this. It's really good, but one of the things he said in the most recent piece I just got to was, I'm going to paraphrase because this isn't an exact quote, but it was, you think you're changing the system, but the system's actually changing you. Or like, how do you know that? So I think, so when you said that about Tyra Banks, I was like, so maybe she went into it thinking, this is an industry that has been exclusive and discriminatory towards women of color, and I'm going to come in and I am going to elevate women of color in this industry. I'm going to give them an opportunity. And so she's thinking she's changing the system, but what's actually happening is the system's actually changing her, because like you said, she's opening the hot door and just bringing people in, and she's not actually disrupting any of the kind of broader problematic
Not at
behavior. And
all. Yes.
but conceptually at that time, she probably thought she was trailblazing, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Um,
And I would suggest she was. I mean, given that
yeah,
it went to so many different countries and different languages and so forth, she was trailblazing at the time, but trailblazing into what exactly?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Did
I
over?
think that was interesting. I think even Kevin Mock, the producer of the
Mm-hmm.
show, didn't really take any ownership for a lot of things
Oh,
that
interesting.
he had a lot of carte blanche power over, that he just didn't, that's just the way the industry is. It's like, that's the killer phrase to any type of change that you want to see out. Well, that's just how it is. No, that's what you continue to edify. That's what you continue to bolster and hold up. You have a choice as to whether you want to do that or not. So yeah, I one of the one of the most eye-opening things, and I know this is probably coming from my biased lens of having always been, I would say, groomed to think about weight all the time. So there's one in particular, one model in particular, that they consistently said something about her weight. And then we went to the editing where
Mm,
they showed her 4 or 5 times eating a bagel, four or 5 times they showed this. Well, if you're paying close attention, you'll see that she has on the same clothes, she has the same hairstyle and everything. They've literally cut one bagel footage up into five. Like, so to make it seem as if she was eating 5 bagels when she was eating the bagel, and they caught her in 5 different views, but it's the same
mm,
one bagel that she's
yeah.
eating. And so I'm like, see, this is what I'm talking about when people, as we say on the streets, people are playing in our face. No, that is not realistic. She's got on I mean, literally, Lisa, it would be you walking down your street in that blue shirt walking the dogs and I clip it 5 different ways and tell everybody you walk the dogs 5 times today.
Yeah.
Maybe, but probably not. I mean, like, these are things that if you're not a producer, if you're not someone who knows the behind the scenes of TV, you're just taking that as it's given to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so of course that's just one thing of many, but it made me start thinking about how many things were served up to be one truth when it was actually something
Yeah.
completely different. And I'm trying to talk around it without spoiling it for people that haven't seen it yet, but there are a number of things that just simply were untrue that were filmed. And my old boss used to say, who am I supposed to believe? You are my lying eyes. It's like, I see this and I should be able to believe it, but I can't, based on the way this has been cut, produced. I mean, like, what hit the cutting room floor that we don't know about? We saw a little bit of that in this.
Yeah, back to editing, hey?
Mm-hmm.
The editing choices that get made
Mm-hmm.
for good or for bad. It's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
power, isn't it? Because you can shape a story in one way or another by how you cut or splice a podcast, a
Absolutely.
show, right? A film. Um, yeah, it's.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really watch the show that much. I'm definitely familiar with it. I used it as a tool of
Mm-hmm.
training around gender equity, particularly equity for women and beauty standards. And that episode where they had to play dead, that
Oh
was
God, yes.
a
Mm-hmm.
training tool around how we normalize and minimize violence against women. So I'm curious to watch it, but I didn't. Yeah, I didn't extensively watch the series, but I do. When was it? When did it air, Shauna? Was it like late '90s into the 2000s, or was it only 2000s?
That's a good question. I think it was 2000s. Let me look it up real quick. Keep going.
Yeah, because we have known.
Oh, I got it. It started out in 2003. So
Okay,
2003 to 2018 with 24 seasons.
15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know,
Yeah.
prior to 2003, there was knowledge as to the way that body image and beauty standards are harmful to young girls, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, in the
Mm-hmm.
1990s, we had, at least in the UK, we had Kate Moss and Naomi Campbell and these like super, super skinny models,
Yes.
runway models, right? Where it was just almost like they were not there. They're like literally physically vanishing
Mm-hmm.
because they're so small. Um, and, the modeling industry and the abuse that exists in that industry, as you've alluded to, and how that is dangerous for young girls looking up at these models and thinking that's glamorous and thinking that's what they want to be. So it actually seems, I'm actually a bit surprised that it was 2003 to 2018. Like that
Mm-hmm.
ended only 8 years ago. Not that
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
And obviously the rise of
Yeah.
social media, their whole series traversed the growth of social media. And so
That's
that's
right.
kind of, yeah, I mean, I'm just very curious. I mean, obviously, because industries are run by men and they don't give a shit, they just want to make money. But
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
yeah, like
Yeah.
how many young girls were in that moment of maturation and growing as
Mm-hmm.
social media became more damaging and as this TV show was still going, among many others, right? It's not just those two things, but what a confluence of messages in the mid 2000s, early and into the 2010s around
Mm.
beauty and size and value and image, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I think yes, definitely the production and so forth, but even thinking too about the types of judges that they brought on to the show. It's
Okay.
like, if you're talking about, Janice Dickinson, yeah, she's a supermodel, but at the same time, she's like encapsulating everything that would be so trauma illiterate about the industry itself. And that was, you know, popular reality TV was folks would not even watch if Janice wasn't there because they knew she was going to say something ridiculous. They
Oh
knew that
gosh.
she was going to, say something problematic. And so, with that, it's like, here we go. We are very strategic on how we use trauma to create a popular show. I mean that's strategic.
Yeah, it's exploiting. I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing this of the episodes I saw, the kinds of feedback that would be given to some of these young women. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Mm-hmm.
devastating. Like sense of
Oh yeah.
self, self-esteem, body. I mean, the whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and some of the things that I think is really interesting in the Black community, in the beauty community, in the fashion community, is that the different standard that Tyra was and still is being held to,
Mm-hmm.
um, especially given that there were Black girls on that show who there were certain things about them that were problematic that Tyra should have known and picked up on. Like, how are you going to have Black women on your show, but then never have Black barbers or Black hairstylists that know
Mm-hmm.
our hair in
Yeah.
such a way that the set is equipped to meet them where they are?
That's
Like,
interesting. They didn't
come
have
on,
that.
Tyra. Well, here's the thing. When I talked it over with some of my friends, they were like, "Shauna, you got to be a little more realistic because Tyra usually wears wigs or extensions or things like that. But if someone like me that showed up with my natural hair and wanted a barber's cut or what have you, there wasn't really anybody there that could barber a Black
Mm.
person's hair there." Or style Black hair in any way with all of our textures and colors and so forth. And I'm like, yeah, you got a point. Did Tyra, not saying that she doesn't wear her natural hair out, but it's very rare that she does. And so she's probably not thinking about natural hair. She's thinking about
Yeah.
industry standard, which are wigs
Yeah.
and extensions.
Right.
What if you show up a
Right.
girl like me that never has worn wigs, extensions, braids, any of that, and you have no one to surface her?
Mm-hmm.
Here we are.
Yeah.
So, again, she's in the fashion industry, but she's still not striving to break the mold
Right.
because that wasn't her priority. That just wasn't her priority.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think what's powerful is what you just brought up before, though, is that, looking at and the recap was very flawed. I mean, I think there was a lot of uh, negativity about the outcomes for a lot of the models, but they didn't really feature any of the models that had incredible careers as a direct
Oh.
result of the show. I like
Okay.
there was
That's
some
interesting.
imbalance. There's some
Yeah.
imbalance around it. But at the same time, I still think it's important for us all to think about when we retroactively look back
Mm-hmm.
at things, what it's almost like a mirror that we hold up to ourselves and say, okay, how am I different based on how I'm receiving this? Like, it's
Yeah.
almost like a funny comedy movie that you thought was just hilarious when you were in college, and then you watch it again as an adult, you're like, this is the most idiotic,
Yeah.
but it, like, you know what I mean? Like, the movie
Yeah.
didn't change, you changed.
Yeah.
And so how much had I changed? I feel like a lot of us who used to be big fans of the show are now like, yeah, not so much. Not so much.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm adding it to my long list of things I need to watch.
Yeah, just add it to your trash TV where you're like, doing something else and watching it halfway. Like,
Okay.
I was in my kitchen doing some stuff while I was watching, but I heard every word. So,
Okay.
all right. Well, Lisa, let's dive into phase two.
So this might feel like a little bit of a hard left, but actually I think it aligns given what you were talking about related to weight and the policing of weight and the way that that is portrayed. So I just wanted to bring to people's attention there are a number of state laws and they are proliferating that are limiting what folks can buy using the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, so SNAP, formerly known as food stamps. So there's currently 5 states, Indiana, Iowa, Nebraska, Utah, and West Virginia, who've passed laws, and there are 13 or so teed up to also join that group. And the idea is that the governments are making decisions about what taxpayer money can be used for when purchasing food using SNAP benefits. So this notion that you don't get to use this money to buy items that are not quote unquote nutritious, because it's wasteful, it serves no purpose in your diet, it's not healthy. I mean, a lot of this is flowing from RFK Jr. and his Make America Healthy Again agenda. But for an example, one of the pieces that I read that kind of clued me into this particular issue is that there's a lot of regulatory gray area and confusion. So I'm gonna read you a clip here from one of the articles that I read. So it says, protein bars can still be purchased with food stamps, even if they have the same amount of sugar as chocolate candy bars, chocolate covered nuts, however, cannot. So you can buy a protein bar that has more sugar than a chocolate candy bar, but you cannot buy chocolate covered nuts. And obviously nuts give you protein, right? Sugary canned coffee is also okay as long as it has milk in it. So policies often say you cannot buy soft drinks unless the soft drink contains milk or milk products, right? And so it's very, very confusing. And in Iowa, folks can use their SNAP benefits to buy a slice of cake, but they can't buy a fruit cup that comes with a spoon because it's the spoon that changes the way the food item is taxed. And so therefore the whatever is in their rules makes the presence of a spoon make that item not nutritious, despite the fact that it's a fruit cup, right? But you can get a slice of cake. So beyond the kind of regulatory nightmare and all of the loopholes and what counts and what doesn't count and how are you enforcing it, I wanted to really just bring up with you and hear your thoughts on the larger philosophical drive behind our governments at the state level. There's nothing at the feds yet. Policing, managing, telling low-income folks who are using these benefits to feed their family and feed themselves what is and is not healthy and what they can and cannot spend their money on. What do you think about that, Shauna?
Yeah, I've always been in this conundrum because this, once again, is just another example, in my opinion, of regulating distrust. Regulating distrust. So, not trusting families to make wise decisions about food for their families. Mm-hmm. Lack of trust. And so, with that, I think what's so frustrating to me, once again, is here we go. This reminds me of a lot of conversations, Lisa, we have about trying to have a micro solution to a macro problem. Mm-hmm. The micro solution is you want to control what families purchase, but at the same time, the macro issue is why don't you have things more available and more affordable that SNAP can be used for.
Right.
And so I think we're majoring in the minors here when we start policing what somebody, yes, I know that somebody can take their SNAP benefits and go buy a half a bushel of crab legs somewhere. I get that. But we're talking about, again, an outlier rather than talking about the systems that make it harder to have healthy food overall. So why are we continuing to terrorize these families that are functioning in a system that does not benefit them? This is a larger systemic problem. And now you're trying to blame individual families for wanting to buy a fruit cup with a spoon, but they can't. To me, it just sounds very it feels like a diversion to me. It feels like a diversion. And it's been going on for a long time where people are very judgmental as to how people are using their SNAP benefits. And the problem is if it kind of reminds me, Lisa, it's like saying, here's a big grocery store full of food, but you can only use your SNAP benefits in this corner. And this corner is the most expensive. So it's going to make you run out of your SNAP benefits more quickly because the grocery store is broken, not that corner of the store.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
not okay. I think it's just a very frustrating process, very frustrating. And
Yeah.
I'm not
So
talking about the abusers. I'm not talking about people that abuse SNAP benefits. That is not what I'm saying. I know there are people that do, but that's not the majority of folks. The majority of folks want a larger system where they can purchase affordable, healthy food. That's what they want.
I mean, and I don't think the number of people that are quote unquote abusing the system, I mean, I think it's infinitesimal.
Exactly.
It's tiny, right? But
Exactly.
this idea that low income people, so I think it comes from a place that if you are economically vulnerable, lower income, the reason why you're in those economic straits is because you individually have
Mm-hmm.
failed in some way, right? You don't make good decisions, you don't work hard enough. And so that's why you don't have enough money. Therefore, we also don't think that you are capable of making good choices about food, right? Let alone the
Mm-hmm.
fact that your kiddos might want a candy bar and it might be like the brightest spot in their week, right? Because they don't have a whole lot else and that's the thing they look forward to. And now we as a government are judging and saying, no, don't get to do that because we know better for you. So it's so paternalistic. And this kind of taps into this notion that people who don't have a lot of money are in that space because of their own failings, which is, to your point, not them. It is a system. And a lot of these rural communities, Shauna, don't have grocery stores, right? Like
No, no,
they're
not
food
convenient.
deserts.
That's right.
So they don't so their choices about where to buy food are limited. And so
Mhm.
then, and again, just to underscore what you said about the expense. Okay, so I have to pay more money for healthier food because healthier, less processed, less sugary food is always more expensive, assuming I can even get it. But my SNAP benefits aren't going up. So now I have a family of four and my buying power has been reduced because I can buy less food. So it doesn't last as
That's
long.
right. That's
So
right.
then everyone's getting smaller portions. That doesn't feel better or more nutritious, right?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Not at all. It doesn't. And so, but that's it to me that will consistently be a diversion.
Yeah.
That will be a diversion forever. So this was a while ago. I'm trying to remember how long it's been, but it's been a long time since this show called High on the Hog that was on, I believe it was on Netflix, talked about this very point of a number of different things, but definitely talked about food deserts. And again, I want us to think about how it may not be a food desert, right? We need to think about even the language that we use in regard to a food desert, because a food desert happens naturally. Like if we saw a natural desert,
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? This is by design. This is by
Mm-hmm.
design. And so who's designing it? I think it's there was one that talked about this in How in the Hog, that talked about it as food apartheid, in
Yeah.
that it's systemically different for different folks. So I'll give you a great example of this, Lisa, that this is definitely a very high acidity example, but an example nonetheless. So Wegmans is a chain that is very well known for really great produce and seafood and all those different things,
Mm-hmm.
especially here in Maryland where you're near the water and so forth. Well, Lisa, there are, I'm like equal distance between two Wegmans. One of them is in a more predominantly white area, and the other one is in a more predominantly African American area.
Okay.
When I go to the one that is in the more predominantly white area, same chain. When I go to the one in the predominantly white area, it is rare, if ever, they don't have exactly what I want. I mean, it could be a very peculiar item that I want,
Mm-hmm.
and they always have it. When I go to the one in the predominantly Black area of the community, it is very rare that they ever have it.
Hmm.
Even when I forget to go get it, when I'm in that particular area of the
Yep.
predominantly that are near my son's schools and all that, I usually just swing by there because it's convenient. Let's say I forget and I decide, oh, I'll go to the other one that's closer to me, that's predominantly Black area. The options are completely different. That is by design. And please don't say, Shauna, you went to the store one time and you just made one comparison. I've lived here for 16 years.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of those 16 years, both of those stores have existed, and I've gone to both of those stores equal amounts of time, and I've always seen a discrepancy. That is not a food desert, because deserts happen naturally. That is food apartheid, in that there is certain food offered in some places and certain food offered in others based on who they think can afford it. And I would also suggest it goes to another level of classism, because remember, I live in Prince George's County, which is one of the most affluent Black areas of the country. So it's not about how much money most folks make all the time either. It's a combination of socioeconomic status and class. The Black folks store doesn't need to have crab legs over there because they shouldn't have them, but we're going to make sure we have that and oysters at
Yep.
the white store.
Yep. Yep.
That's
Yeah.
food apartheid.
So, the other thing, so taking these two stores as examples, so the average SNAP household in 2023 received a benefit of $332 a month. That's
Okay.
for two people. If you had children, you get slightly larger benefit, and that's $574 a month for the average household of a 3.3 people. I mean, I'm not sure who the 0.3 is, but
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
when you think about how expensive groceries are, because you've commented to me with your two boys who are growing rapidly and very,
Yes.
very active, that
Mm-hmm.
one trip to the grocery store has cost you more than what you would get on SNAP benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So now, Shauna, I, government, am saying you can only spend it on these particular healthy things. That 574 a month, that's not going to get you very far with the cost of groceries these days. Plus, if you're saying I can't take shortcuts, I can't buy any processed food, I can't buy, like, right? I mean, especially where you are in Maryland, it's pretty expensive. I mean, and in Denver, it's expensive. Like, am I accurate there in thinking that that is not even close to enough?
Not even close. Not even
Okay.
close. And so I'm an open book, y'all. So what was the amount that you gave again, Lisa?
So for a household with children, so it's average monthly benefit $574 a month.
Okay. And how many people in the household?
3.3 that's based on.
Okay, that's about right. Okay, gotcha. So let me be very clear with y'all. So I have 50-50 custody of my sons, which means I have them every other week. So 2 weeks out of a 4 week month, obviously, right? And I also make sure that we don't necessarily eat canned foods here. We don't eat,
Mm-hmm.
we usually do, fresh produce and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
I would be hard pressed to go in my kitchen right now to find anything canned, because we just don't eat that way because of the salt content and everything else, our medical history, so forth. And I have a son that's on the spectrum. Okay. So I'm paying close attention to all these nutritional
Yep.
needs. So if I go buy groceries, which I usually do, I go one big shop for that week. I'm lucky if I can get out of the store under $200. It's probably going to be about 200, 215. That doesn't include if I need to go make another quick run because I forgot something, we're just That's how we are these days, y'all. Forgive me. Perimenopause is real. My brain is all over. But let's say I need to go make an extra run. So I would comfortably say that I would spend 225 for myself and my two sons for 1 week. 1 week of nutritious food in this house. And I cook mostly if they don't cook for themselves, but I cook every meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, right? So 225 times, let's say I had my boys for 4 weeks instead of the 2 weeks out of the year. Yeah, we're looking at right at $900.
Yeah. So that 574 is $600. I'm sorry, $300 too little. And but that's based on perhaps buying cheaper goods, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So, and I shop at pretty large scale places like BJ's, Costco's, that type of place. That it's going to be tight. It's going to be very tight for us for what they need based on their nutritional needs, based on our medical history. It's going to be tough.
So yeah, so I just find these rules so nonsensical. I mean, especially since they're so inconsistently applied and there's all these loopholes and it differs from state to state and doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
you can't buy chocolate covered nuts, but you can buy a chocolate covered protein bar that
Well, and
has
I'm
more
wondering
sugar
about the
than the
kids.
nuts.
I mean, I realize that I have, I have a standard for the boys in regard to their healthy food. I get that. But at the same time, that doesn't even consider family members that have legitimate diagnosed food
Right.
allergies, like
Right.
certain things that they cannot have, or the packaging they cannot have. Like, yeah, you're giving them a bag of pretzels, but the pretzels were packaged in a peanut factory and they have a peanut allergy. Like, there are specific things that you have to think of. And the only reason why I know this is because the schools are very conscious of this, obviously, as
Mhm.
they need to
Mhm.
be. So, no, my kid may not have an allergy, but I can't send something that their classmate have an allergy to.
Right.
These
Right.
are all considerations. And so, no, that we would be hard pressed in this house for them to eat what they need to based on their age, based on our medical history. We have congenital heart disease in our family, plus diabetes on both sides. No,
Yeah,
it would be
and
tight.
the Brooke Rollins, who's the Secretary of Agriculture, I don't think she was making this comment in relation to these laws that are limiting what you can buy on SNAP, but she made some comment that you could buy a piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, and something else for $3 or something was what she said, right? And like this is a person who obviously doesn't go to the grocery store very often, doesn't cook their own food, right? And then this journalist lived on a piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, based on this budget that the agriculture department had put out. Like this was only about a month ago. And he's like, I don't feel very good because I had basically chicken that was dry because I couldn't afford oil or something. There was something, and and I had that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I felt awful after like 5 days of doing that. So this just did,
Clueless.
yeah, just detachment. It's like people who don't, when folks say, "Oh, SNAP benefit people are buying oysters and caviar," like they just have no idea what things cost or how much benefits actually are, right? Like,
Not a clue.
yeah,
Well, and that's what got me when they first threatened to cut the SNAP benefits, and I'm watching the stories of single parents who said, I already only eat one meal a day to make sure the kids
yeah,
get enough throughout the day,
yeah,
and you're telling me you're going to cut it further?
yeah,
No,
and
that's
then
not okay.
also put these requirements around what you can and cannot buy, right? Because you are too stupid to figure that out yourself. Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. And having no clue. Let me tell you something. If you came in here with one leg of chicken, one floret of broccoli,
there's one floret of broccoli, just one piece of broccoli, Shauna.
look, these boys would be like, Mom, where's the rest of the food? Like, it wouldn't even like that. That's not a meal for them. That's not even a meal.
Right, but you couldn't even put anything on. You couldn't do a sauce or any like lubricant to cook the chicken. So you basically just have like dry piece of chicken breast. Yeah.
Mm-mm, mm-mm,
Anyway,
mm-mm.
this is all happening at the state level, y'all. So pay attention because there's a ton of stuff that gets passed at the state level that is so awful. It is not just the
Mm-hmm.
federal government you have to worry about. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Look, I know if I know my sons as well as I know I do, they're going to be the first ones protesting if they try to bring that stuff to Maryland. It's like, wait a minute, no, not going to work for us growing boys at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. And I'm only imagining, Lisa, as much as I won't say we, some states are trying to give emphasis to uh, early childhood development. Come on, y'all. Go back to the Black Panthers and why they were adamant about making sure that kids got enough nutrition for brain
Yep.
development.
Yeah.
What are you
Cutting.
doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Incredible. So yes. So write your folks in your particular states. I'm looking at this list of states here that are implicated, and I know people in almost all of them. Yeah, don't let this happen, y'all. Don't let this happen. All right. Well, Lisa, that is a wrap for this week's episode of Unfazed Unedited. And look, I'm hungry now. It's time for dinner for me. But while I'm grabbing dinner, you all can certainly reach out to us on our social media, our podcast apps at Unfazed Unedited. Email us at info@unfazedpodcast.com or visit our website, unfazedpodcast.com, where you can access both the old and the new shows. So if you liked this week's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share with your friends, coworkers, or others in this phase of your life. So, Dr. Lisa, until next time.
All right. See you next time.